My name is Camilla, and at 27 years old, I realized my family didn't love me. They just loved my line of credit. It happened at 11:51 p.m. on Christmas Eve. My phone lit up the dark, cold silence of my home office with a single text from my mother. "We have decided as a family that you are no longer welcome here. Do not come tomorrow." I stared at the screen, my hand freezing over my drafting tablet. Across town, in a warm house full of food I bought and decorations I paid for, they were celebrating my exclusion. Then, a second notification dinged. My younger brother, Tyler, had hearted the message. That was the moment the sadness died. Drop a comment with a broken heart emoji if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family during the holidays. I want to know I am not alone. There were no tears, no screaming, just a sudden, sharp focus like a lens snapping into place. For 5 years, I had not really been a daughter. I had been a silent investor in the startup company known as my parents' reputation. And tonight, the board of directors had just fired me. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkness of my apartment, the only light in a room filled with the drafts and blueprints of my life. I logged into the family cellular account first. There it was. 4 lines. Unlimited data. International roaming for Tyler, because he claimed he needed it for his networking, even though his network consisted entirely of crypto forums and online gaming lobbies. I moved my cursor to the Manage Plan tab. I selected my parents' numbers. I selected Tyler's number. I hit remove.
Click. Confirm. Gone.
Next was the streaming bundle. Premium cable, the sports package my father insisted on for golf season, the ad-free tier my mother required for her movies. I had been paying for it since I was 22, a recurring monthly tribute to keep the peace. I didn't hesitate. I canceled the entire subscription. Then came the big one, the country club membership. $350 a month so David could walk around the greens looking like a man of leisure, rubbing elbows with people he pretended to be peers with. I was the one who paid the dues. I was the one who ensured his keycard worked every Saturday morning. I navigated to the billing page. I deleted my credit card information and set the account to non-renewal effective immediately. It took exactly 12 minutes to dismantle the financial scaffolding I had built around their lives. 12 minutes to undo 5 years of being the good daughter. As the confirmation emails started pinging into my inbox, my mind drifted back to the dinner that had started it all, just 4 hours ago. The air in their house had smelled like pine needles and expensive potpourri. The tree was perfect, draped in gold ribbon I had bought. The table was set with the good china. We were halfway through the roast beef when my mother, Susan, cleared her throat. She had that look in her eyes, the one that meant she wanted something but wanted you to think it was your idea to give it. She told me that for their 30th wedding anniversary, they wanted to go on a river cruise through Europe. A second honeymoon. It would be magical, she said. It would be the trip of a lifetime. Then came the pause. The heavy, expectant silence that always landed on my shoulders. $15,000. That was the price tag. I remember putting my fork down. I remember the cold knot in my stomach. I looked at Tyler, who was busy texting under the table, oblivious and safe from these demands. Then I looked at my parents. I told them no. I said it quietly, respectfully. I explained that I had been saving every spare cent for a down payment on my own home. I was 27. I was tired of renting. I was ready to build something for myself. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. My mother didn't scream. She didn't throw a plate. That would have been easier. Instead, she let her eyes fill with tears, a performance she had perfected over decades. She looked at my father and said, in a voice trembling with weaponized fragility, that she didn't realize I had become so selfish. She said I cared more about bricks and mortar than the flesh and blood that raised me. She said I was ruining the spirit of Christmas with my greed. My father, David, didn't look at me. He just pointed to the door. If you are not willing to support this family, he said, then you don't need to eat at this table. I left. I drove home in silence. And now, sitting in the dark, watching the service-terminated notifications roll in one by one, I realized something. They were right. I was done supporting this family. I closed my laptop. The silence in my apartment wasn't lonely anymore. It was expensive, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one paying the bill. The silence lasted exactly 31 days. 31 days of peace, of waking up without anxiety, of working in a rhythm that felt entirely my own. I had started to believe the severance was permanent. I had started to believe I was free. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. The screen flashed Mom. My stomach dropped, that old, familiar reflex of dread conditioning me before I could even take a breath. I stared at it. I let it ring. It stopped. Then it started again, immediately. I answered. I didn't say hello. I just listened. Camilla, please, Susan sobbed on the other end. It wasn't the fake, delicate crying she used to get her way at dinner parties. This was raw, ugly panic. You have to help us. They're going to hurt him. Who? I asked, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hand. Tyler, she choked out. He made some bad investments.
Crypto.
He borrowed money on a margin, Camilla. He owes $48,000. The platform is threatening legal action, and he borrowed from people he shouldn't have to cover the initial loss. $48,000. I closed my eyes. Tyler had been bragging for months about his financial genius, posting screenshots of graphs I knew he didn't understand. Now the bill had come due. We don't have it, my mother continued, her voice rising in hysteria. We maxed out the credit cards for the anniversary trip deposits. We have nothing liquid. You have to help him. He's your brother. They're saying they'll break his legs, Camilla. Please. I should have hung up. I should have told her that this was the consequence of raising a son to believe he was exempt from reality. I should have reminded her that 31 days ago, she had evicted me from her life because I wouldn't pay for a boat ride. But I didn't. There is a concept I learned about years later, but I was living it in that moment. It is called the invisible chain of the survivor. It is a psychological tether forged in childhood, specifically designed for the child who is treated as a utility rather than a person. When you are raised to believe that your only value lies in your usefulness, saying no feels like a death sentence. It feels like confirming you are worthless. You become addicted to the moment of rescue, because in that split second when you hand over the money or fix the problem, they look at you with something that resembles love. It isn't love, it is just relief that the tool worked, but when you are starving, even a crumb looks like a feast. I was starving. Even after the eviction. Even after the cruelty. A small, broken part of me thought if I save him this time, they will have to see me. They will have to acknowledge that I am the good one. I can't pay it all, I said, my voice sounding hollow in the empty apartment. Anything, she begged. Anything helps. I have $24,000, I said. That is my entire savings for the house. It is everything I have. Give it to us, she said instantly. No hesitation. No, we can't ask you to do that. Just the immediate, greedy grasp of a drowning woman pulling her rescuer down with her. We can find the rest if you give us that. Please, Camilla. He's learned his lesson. He's terrified. He'll change. I promise. The drive to the bank was a blur of gray highway and autopilot. The teller looked at me with concern when I requested the cashier's check. $24,000. It represented 3 years of overtime, 3 years of skipped vacations, 3 years of dreaming about a front door that belonged to me. I signed the paper. I felt sick. I met them at their house. I didn't go inside. I stood on the porch, the same porch they had pointed me off of on Christmas Eve. Tyler was there, looking pale and shaking, hiding behind our father. David wouldn't meet my eyes. I handed the check to my mother. She snatched it from my hand like a lifeline. He pays me back, I said, my voice hard. Every cent. This is a loan. Of course, Susan said, already turning away, her eyes fixed on the check. Thank you, Camilla. You saved us. You're a good sister. A good sister. The transaction was complete. I had bought my status back. I walked to my car, expecting to feel relieved. Instead, I felt lighter in the worst way possible, as if I had just hollowed myself out. I had paid the ransom, But I didn't know yet that I hadn't bought Tyler's safety. I had just bought the weapon they would use to destroy me. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence from the people whose lives I had just saved. I tried to tell myself that no news was good news, that Tyler was working, paying off the remainder of his debt, learning the hard lesson my $24,000 had bought him. Then, on a Saturday morning, I saw it. It popped up on my social media feed, a photo posted by Tyler's girlfriend, a girl named Madison who I had met once and who had looked at me like I was the help. The caption read, "New truck day. So proud of my man for grinding so hard. #blessed, #new wheels." I clicked the photo. There was Tyler, grinning like he had won the lottery, leaning against a brand new, lifted pickup truck. Not a used sedan. Not a practical commuter. A monster of a vehicle with chrome detailing and oversized tires. The kind of truck that cost upwards of $60,000. I zoomed in on the date. Posted 1 hour ago. I drove to my parents' house. I didn't call first. I didn't text. I just got in my car and drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The truck was parked in the driveway, glistening in the sun. It looked like an insult made of metal and glass. I pounded on the door. My father answered, looking annoyed at the interruption. He was holding a golf club, likely cleaning it for a round he could now afford because I wasn't there to cancel his membership again. "Where is he?" I demanded, pushing past him. "Camilla, calm down," David said, though he didn't move to stop me. "What is your problem?" "My problem," I said, walking into the living room where Tyler was showing Susan something on his phone, "is that truck in the driveway." Tyler looked up, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second before he composed himself. "Oh, hey, Cam. Nice, right? Just picked it up. You told me you owed $48,000, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You told me you were going to be killed. I gave you $24,000 to save your life, Tyler. Did you pay the debt?" He shrugged, looking back at his phone. "I paid some of it. I made a deal. Restructured the payment plan." "You bought a truck," I screamed. "You took my money, my house money, and you used it as a down payment on a toy." "I need it for work," he shot back, defensive now. "I'm starting a landscaping business. You have to spend money to make money, Camilla. You wouldn't understand. You just sit at a computer all day." I looked at my mother. Susan was studiously examining a throw pillow, refusing to meet my gaze.
"You knew," I said.
"You knew he didn't pay the debt." "He needs a fresh start," Susan said, her voice taking on that familiar, pleading whine. "He was depressed, Camilla. The debt was crushing him. He needed a win. He needed something to make him feel like a man again. That truck, it gives him confidence." Confidence. I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "He stole from me. That isn't confidence. That is fraud." "It's not stealing," David interjected, stepping into the room. "You gave him the money. It was a gift. It was a loan," I shouted. "I explicitly said it was a loan." "Family doesn't loan to family," David said, crossing his arms. His face was set in a look of supreme arrogance, the look of a man who believed his own rewritten history. "Once the money leaves your hand, it's his. You don't get to dictate how he spends it. Stop being so controlling. It's unbecoming." I looked at them, really looked at them. My father, with his unearned pride. My mother, with her enabling weakness. My brother, with his sociopathic entitlement. "Okay," I said. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy stone in my gut. "Okay, if that's how it works." "Where are you going?" Susan asked as I turned to the door. "To see a lawyer," I said. "You wouldn't," David scoffed. "You won't see your own brother." "Watch me," I said. I left. I didn't go home. I went straight to the office of a contract lawyer a colleague had recommended. I paid the retainer fee with my credit card. I had him draft a demand letter. It was simple, factual, and brutal. Tyler had 30 days to repay the $24,000, or I would file a civil suit for fraud and unjust enrichment. I sent it via certified mail. I wanted the paper trail. I wanted the signature. But I wasn't done. I knew a lawsuit would take months, maybe years. I needed to cut the cord completely. I went home and logged into every remaining shared account I had forgotten or left active out of pity. The Netflix password they all used?
Changed.
The Amazon Prime account shipping to their address?
Removed.
The shared cloud storage where Tyler backed up his business plans? Deleted. I sat in my apartment, the silence absolute. I had fired the first shot in a war I didn't want, but I was determined to finish it. I didn't know then that by trying to reclaim my money, I had just threatened their entire ecosystem. And a parasite, when threatened, doesn't just leave. It attacks. 3 days after I sent the demand letter, I came home to an unlocked door. I knew I had locked it. I was meticulous about it, especially lately. I stood in the hallway, my hand hovering over the knob, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird.
There was no sign of forced entry.
No splintered wood, no scratched metal. The lock had simply been turned. I pushed the door open. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. "Hello." I called out, feeling foolish. No answer. I walked into the living room. My TV was there. My jewelry box on the dresser was untouched. My purse, which I had left on the kitchen counter that morning in a rush, was still there. Then I looked into my home office. My stomach bottomed out. The desk, usually dominated by my dual-monitor setup and my professional-grade iMac, was bare. The dust outlines where the stands had been were the only things left. I rushed over, panic rising in my throat like bile. My external hard drives, the redundant backups containing 5 years of client work, my portfolio, my entire professional life, were gone. $15,000 in equipment.
Gone.
But the value wasn't the hardware. It was the data. Without those drives, I was professionally dead. I spun around looking for a clue, for anything. That was when I saw it. Sitting on the kitchen island was a single silver key. I recognized it immediately. It was the spare key I had given my mother 3 years ago, for emergencies. I had forgotten they even had it. Next to the key was a note, scrawled on the back of an old receipt in handwriting I knew better than my own. Tyler's. Lawyers cost money. Consider this the interest on the debt you owe this family for raising you. I stared at the note. I didn't scream.
I didn't cry.
I felt a strange, dissociative numbness, as if I were watching a movie about someone else's life. My phone buzzed. A text from Susan. Tyler brought the computer to the pawn shop. He says he can get enough to make the truck payments for a few months until his business takes off. We told him to leave the key so you wouldn't worry about changing the locks. A call off the lawyer, Camilla. Stop this nonsense before you ruin your brother's future over a computer. Ruin his future? Over a computer? In that moment, standing in my violated sanctuary, I understood something profound about the people who raised me. It is a concept called the trap of normalized cruelty. Most people think of evil as something dramatic, a villain twirling a mustache. But in families like mine, evil is banal. It is the slow, steady erosion of boundaries until the extraordinary becomes mundane. My parents did not see this as burglary. They did not see this as a felony. In their warped reality, I was not a separate person with my own property. I was an extension of the family unit, a resource to be harvested. To them, my iMac wasn't my livelihood. It was just an asset sitting in their daughter's house, and therefore, it was available to solve their son's problem. They had normalized the extraction of my value to such a degree that when I finally said no, they viewed my boundary as an act of aggression. In their minds, I was the thief for withholding my resources. Tyler breaking into my home wasn't a crime to them. It was a corrective measure. It was them re-establishing the natural order where I give and they take. They genuinely believed they were the victims here. They believed I had forced their hand. I looked at the empty desk again. They had taken my tools. They had taken my work. They had violated the one space that was solely mine. If I did nothing, if I let this slide like I had let the insults and the financial abuse slide for years, this would never end. Next time, it wouldn't be a computer. It would be my car. It would be my safety. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my father. I dialed 911. Emergency, the operator said. I need to report a burglary, I said, my voice ice cold. I know who did it, and I know where he is. The police did not need a detective squad to solve this one. I had the text admission from my mother. I had the pawn shop location. I had the serial numbers of my equipment. Within 2 hours, Tyler was in handcuffs. They found him at a sports bar, toasting his new truck with money that belonged to my future. I met them at the precinct. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing buzz, casting everything in a sickly yellow pallor. Tyler was in a holding cell, reportedly crying and asking for his mommy. And then his mommy arrived. Susan burst through the station doors like a hurricane of hairspray and indignation, David trailing behind her with a face like thunder. They spotted me sitting on a hard plastic bench near the sergeant's desk and descended. "Drop the charges," David ordered. "No, hello. No, are you okay?" Just a command barked at a subordinate.
Right now.
"You tell them it was a misunderstanding. You tell them you gave him permission." "I didn't," I said, not looking up from my hands. "He's your brother." Susan shrieked, grabbing my arm. I flinched, and a passing officer put a hand on his belt, stepping forward. Susan let go, but her voice dropped to a venomous hiss. "You are ruining his life, Camilla. A felony record? He'll never get a good job. He'll never get a loan. You are destroying his future over a few pieces of metal." "I am not destroying his future," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "He destroyed it when he decided he was entitled to my labor. And you helped him hold the match." "We were protecting the family," David shouted, his face turning an alarming shade of purple. "That is what leaders do. We make the hard choices. We take from those who have to support those who need. That is how this family works." "Not anymore," a voice cut through the noise. It wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. We all turned. Standing at the precinct entrance, leaning on an ebony cane but standing straighter than anyone in the room, was my grandmother, Dorothy. My father's face went slack. "Mother? What are you doing here?" Dorothy didn't look at him. She walked past him, past Susan, who was suddenly shrinking into her designer coat, and stopped in front of me. She looked at my tired eyes. She looked at the police report in my hand. "I heard about the truck," she said to me. "And the burglary."
How?
I asked. "I have my ways," she said. Then she turned to her son.
David.
"Susan, sit down." They sat.
It was instinct.
When Dorothy commanded, you obeyed. "You speak of protecting the family," Dorothy said, her voice ice cold. "You speak of hard choices. Let us talk about choices. For 30 years, I have made a choice. I chose to subsidize your failures, David." The room went silent. Even the desk sergeant seemed to be listening. "What?" David whispered. "The house you live in?" Dorothy continued, her voice slicing through the air. "I paid the down payment. I pay the property taxes every year. The consulting business you run that somehow never turns a profit? I cover the overhead. The cruises? The country club? The cars? Who do you think pays the American Express bill when you forget?" David was pale. Susan looked like she was going to be sick. "I did it because I promised your father I would look after you," Dorothy said. "I thought I was helping, but I see now I was just feeding a parasite. I created a monster who believes he is a king, and that monster raised a son who thinks he is a prince." She looked at the holding cell door. "You stole from your daughter," she said, pointing a shaking finger at David. "You stole from the only person in this family who actually works for her living. You drained her to feed your own delusions of grandeur." "Mother, please," David stammered. "It's complicated. Cash flow." "There is no cash flow," Dorothy snapped. "There is only my bank account, and as of this morning, it is closed to you." Susan let out a gasp. "Dorothy, you can't. The mortgage is your problem," Dorothy said. "The credit cards are canceled. The monthly stipend is gone. You are 52 years old, David. It is time you learned what the real world costs." She turned back to me. Her eyes softened, and I saw a glimmer of tears she refused to shed. "I am sorry, Camilla," she said. "I enabled this. I shielded them from consequence, and they pass the bill to you. But the debt is settled now." She reached into her purse and pulled out a check. She pressed it into my hand. "Press the charges," she said, loud enough for Tyler to hear through the walls. "Let him learn. And then, my dear, go live your life." I looked at the check. It was for $24,000 plus an extra $15,000 for the computer. I looked at my parents. They were slumped on the bench, stripped of their arrogance, stripped of their power, just two middle-aged people realizing the lights were about to be turned off. "Goodbye," I said. I turned to the officer. "I'm ready to sign the statement." The collapse of the house of cards didn't take long. Without Dorothy's funding, my parents' lifestyle evaporated faster than morning mist. The for sale sign went up on their lawn 2 weeks after the arrest. It wasn't a strategic downsize. It was a fire sale. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, far away from the country club friends they could no longer afford to impress. Tyler took a plea deal. He avoided jail time, thanks to a public defender, but he walked away with 5 years of probation and a felony record for grand larceny. The truck was repossessed. The landscaping business was exposed for what it was, a fantasy. Last I heard, he was working stocking shelves at a warehouse, a job he actually had to show up for. As for me, the check from my grandmother cleared the next morning. $39,000. It covered the loan, the stolen equipment, and the emotional damages of a lifetime. I bought a new iMac. I upgraded my security system. And then I did the most important thing of all. I changed my number. I am sitting in my home office now. The light is streaming in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My new hard drives are humming quietly, backing up the work I love, the work that is solely mine. It is quiet here. There are no frantic texts demanding money. There are no guilt trips disguised as holiday invitations. There is just peace. For a long time, I felt guilty about the silence. I wondered if I was cold, if I was broken, if I was the bad daughter they always said I was. But then I realized something profound, and I want to share it with you. We are taught from the moment we are born that blood is thicker than water. We are told that family is a sacred bond that can never be broken, no matter how much it hurts. We are conditioned to believe that walking away is an act of failure, or worse, an act of cruelty. But that is a lie. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for them and for yourself is to let go. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, even if those people share your DNA. You are not a bank account. You are not a retirement plan. You are not a safety net for people who refuse to learn how to fly. Walking away from my family wasn't an act of hate. It was an act of supreme self-love. It was me finally deciding that my peace was more valuable than their comfort. It was me realizing that I could build my own family, one chosen not by blood, but by respect, kindness, and mutual support. I looked at the empty space on my desk where the old picture of my family used to sit. It's gone now. In its place, I put a small mirror. When I look at it, I don't see a victim. I don't see a spare part. I see a survivor. I see a woman who saved herself. And that is the only family legacy I need. If Camilla's story inspired you to choose yourself, hit that share button. Let's spread the courage to break free.